Welcome to the Just Ingredients podcast. I'm Cara Lynn, and here we talk all things nourishing to the mind, body, and soul. This is a place where you can find just good ingredients to life. Dr. Jared Price has his doctorate as a family nurse practitioner. He is a dynamic and engaging provider that finds joy in serving the patients he sees. As part of his philosophy of care, Dr. Price believes in being fully attentive to all of his patients, recognizing their specific needs and responding with genuine interest and concern. He has since become certified in many avenues to broaden the holistic approach, allowing him to better serve his patients. Some of the common conditions that he treats would include hormonal imbalances such as thyroid, reproductive, PCOS, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, adrenal fatigue, and insufficiency. Dr. Price also treats patients for urological conditions. He works at Pure Life Medical in Lehi, Utah, doing integrative medicine where he practices a quality, holistic approach of healing his patients. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, I'm excited for our guest because he actually is a doctor that has helped my son before and actually was very helpful in helping my son with some health issues while he was overseas. And so I'm excited to talk to him today. And so welcome to the show, Dr. Price.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. I'm excited.
Will you just begin the show by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background?
My journey is kind of unique in the sense that I actually kind of went through my own healing process to the point where I'm at today. I, of course, graduated with my doctorate up at the University of Utah, but then afterwards, I worked in a men's health that in a urology clinic for 3 years. And I still love, that's my bread and butter on the side with helping with urologic patients. And so I even incorporate that today when I see patients. But what was unique is I started out with a men's health approach of just launching a men's health there and realized we're not helping fix the problems of disease. We're just band-aiding and ripping out things out of the body. And so that's when I discovered, we can do more of like helping our bodies feel better. And so what happened later was that I got really sick. We won't go into the details of that. And it was actually emotionally driven, which was interesting to me because it was a neurologic dysregulation. But from that allowed me to really discover how sick the body can get. And no one could really find answers to my problem. I think that's for most colleagues of mine, and you included, like we're curious minds that want to figure out why this is not working right. And so that's what I did. I went to work and found that functional medicine, naturopaths really knew more on how to help the body than conventional. They are important, and I use that today. But that allowed me to understand the gut, the importance of the gut, where it is housing the immune system, and if we don't take care of our guts, it really becomes a huge problem today. And where we're all living in a stressful lifestyle, it's easy for it to get dysregulated with the nervous system and the immune system just to go south. So with that being said, that's where I have lived in functional space for a few years now, for 4+ years. And which allowed me to get where I am today.
Oh, I love it. Well, most doctors on here, it's crazy. Most doctors have had some health crisis where they've needed to do more than what was being given to them. And they went and asked questions and searched and researched and found answers. And so they're trying to help others. And so I love that you're trying to help others also. I have some friends that go to you. And so I do know that you treat men and women, but I know you see a lot of women.
Uh-huh.
So I'm actually curious just to know what are some of like the top issues that you see most frequently amongst women?
Yeah, so it always starts out, my initial consults are an hour and a half, just because we want to dive into their journey and so that I can be a resource in that journey for them. And with the female, I would say is 75% in my clinic. They just are more curious minds of being proactive with their health than the men. The first things that usually come up on a female standpoint is where the hormones stop treating them appropriately and maintaining their health and safety. They'll start to feel just off, right? And so that they're not feeling their prime self anymore. And that can usually start at age 25 to 30. And there is so much we can offer to be able to help them feel in their prime outside of medicine, right? And so usually I would say hormone dysregulation is one of the things usually mentioned. I always say, what are your top 3 things that you really want addressed today, right? And I always see like a hormone as one of those listed every time. And right below that is fatigue, which we know is tied to adrenal stamina, right? Like, so my 3-leg stool of mitochondrial support is always the sex hormones, the thyroid, and adrenal. And so when we address those 3, that triangular stool, it really supports the body and allows mitochondrial rehab and support to occur. So.
Oh, interesting. I'm intrigued that it's all 3 of those. So I'm just going to ask you then about those 3, because if that's what most women are dealing with, then let's, try to help all the women that are listening to this podcast. And so should we start with hormones, or do you want to start with adrenals?
I mean, either. They're all important to me. So if
Okay.
maybe I'll just kind of describe it and then you can decide too. So the long distance runners and a short distance sprinter, the adrenal is our short distance sprinter and the other 2 are our long distance runners. And so people will start to feel off with both. They'll feel off with that sprinter and when the 2 runners are going down.
Since there's only one sprinter, let's do the adrenal glands then. So let's start there. Okay, so maybe we just start with what are the adrenal glands and what role they're playing in the woman's body.
Okay. So yeah, I have a whiteboard in my office behind me because I love to teach. I actually taught at the University of Utah in nursing for 3 years as well. Sorry to mention that. But I love teaching. I love seeing the eyes just light up when they click with knowledge. It's so fun. Anyway, so I always teach the adrenal gland is this little hat or gland that sits on the kidney, right? You have 2 kidneys, so you have 2 glands sitting on that. Within that, we could geek out and go detail with the physiologics, but we'll kind of keep it really short. That gland has many parts to it. It has the core and then the exterior portion, and each part has a role that it plays. The big thing that is supportive to the adrenals that most kind of neglect is mineral. Mineral allows the adrenal to function better, and also adaptogens. I love your adrenal complex. I support that so much because it gives
thank
that.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love the good work that you and Josh are doing. It's really beautiful. The thing that I love about the adrenal complex is it's an adaptogen that supports the exterior, the core part of the adrenal. It needs the electrolytes, which is also yours. The electrolytes are really good, but you can also say like they run out of your bag of electrolytes. They can even do Redmonds, right? Depending on blood pressure is always a regulating thing that I look at with the adrenal. Because the adrenal, if you have high blood pressure, you can't really do a lot of salt. You can just go into a hypertensive issue. So the only salt that I allow on a normal or high blood pressure is Celtic salt, because it allows the mineral to salt ratio is really, really good. There's like 91 plus minerals in Celtic salt, which you can find on Amazon for like only $8. So really a great source if they can't find your electrolyte and they run out of that. I love that yours is loaded in potassium because we have so much salty foods of any kind that we have plenty of salt. It's the potassium ratio with the salt that's the problem. So when you give the adrenal that electrolyte balance, that allows the whole storehouse of the adrenal to start working. And so then there's a less effect of like interleukins and catecholamines starting to raise, which is that stressful response of a neurologic response body, which dysregulates the gut. So supporting adrenal allows cortisol, our stress hormone, to be in a more balanced area. So that, and I like the number to be 14 to 16. In a pathologic or emotional status, which can happen with divorce, loss of a loved one, so forth, cortisol is good at running from a bear or an emotional event or any kind of life crisis that happens. What's great about it is it will sprint and it will rise. Some people live in the 20s to 30s of cortisol in the morning. And that is a sign that, okay, it is sprinting right now. But when we see that it drops below the 14 to 16 range, 14 to 16 is a very stable adrenal. When it drops into the 10 and then the 8 and then the 5, we're starting to go into stage 1, stage 2 adrenal insufficiency, which is so beautiful, may I add, when we heal the adrenal, when it actually will start to just go to its normal self again. I would say 8 out of 10, everyone's adrenal is sitting in the stage 1, stage 2 adrenal insufficiency level. It's less than 10.
Oh, wow.
So it's really effective to get that to a good self. And how you know if you have an adrenal issue, you will have a stressful tiredness about you. If you feel stressed and you're tired, it is your cortisol that's winning that race of really eating at you. And that's never good. So let me go into the further things that can happen with cortisol. Cortisol goes up, sugar goes up, right? So then you have like this in the CMP, the complete metabolic panel, you'll have a glucose measurement, but then you'll have the kidney and liver associated to it. And I've seen when the glucose is unmanaged, then you have liver enzymes also being raised from fatty liver. So when the glucose goes up, it suppresses, that cortisol suppresses our immune system, which then allows pathogens to grow in, right? Neurologic dysregulation occurs. And then our guts, our microbiomes get very leaky. And so then we have autoimmunity starting to happen because the immune system, 80% of the time, is living in our gut. So when, just think of it, if your house is like full of holes and on fire, it's not happy at all. And so then when it goes to our thyroid, our joints, our face to like fight infection or anything, and like lupus and so forth, it is on fire now. So it makes the skin and everything else come on fire. So then it just keeps crashing from there.
Yeah, that cortisol is like the root cause, it almost seems like, of all these different issues. And you talked about it messing with like the blood glucose levels and autoimmune issues, things like that. But that increased cortisol also plays a problem with our progesterone and estrogen and testosterone, right?
It will then suppress. Part of that suppression is the thyroid and the testosterone, estrogen. Estrogen dominance really occurs. So the thing that's key is that our adrenals is where the progesterone and testosterone begins to cascade its response of hormone, not in the uterus. And so if our adrenals are really revved or falling apart, so is the testosterone and progesterone. And so that's when you get those, as Josh was putting, high ratios of like high estrogen and like zero progesterone. And that's because the adrenal, that's a sign when you're low in progesterone that you are having an adrenal involvement, right? The adrenals are not okay because they're not supporting the progesterone like they should. So, and same with the thyroid.
So if this is due to the increase of cortisol, is it purely from stress or is it from diet as well?
Oh, good chicken and egg question. It's so fun. I would say very much so that it can be both. It just depends who is winning the most. And when you're improving diet, for example, and you just see a huge 50 to 75% increase, and we do a rating system on that, just to make sure that we're seeing differences. I like when people are not, when they're on fire and not feeling well, I'm following up on them every 6 to 8 weeks because I can optimize very quickly that way. But yes, to your question, you can see which one is the egg and which one's the chicken by the response of the body. So the answer is stress. When I think of stress, I think of let's do some more Epsom baths, right? So that we're allowing the body to regulate better. But then I go more into a neurologic rehab approach. Also, we haven't even mentioned this, but it's huge. Methylation cascade pathways are huge. So fixing an MTHFR like with you, it's a huge stress on our body. Just think of that river of I just call everything like a river. Mouth to anus is a river. We have many rivers of pathways, and that methylation piece, it's like dammed, right? So the river is like a small stream when it should be strong of detoxing, right? And MTHFR, the COMP gene, the MF gene, and I have like 16 genes that we check because right in the initial, if they want it, because that could be the answer. That could be the root cause of the stress. yes, you have emotional, but sometimes we can't get away from that emotional or our work life, right? We can't just be bubble wrapped, we have to show up in life.
That's interesting because I always think of the stress as the emotional stress of like our daily lives, right? We're just busy. We're trying to get kids off to school. Then we're running to work and then we're running to finish a project or whatever. That stress, or just the stress of finances or the stress of relationships. But I didn't realize that methylation issues internally could be causing the stress that's playing a role with the adrenals.
And so to speak to that, I love how much you outreach to the communities nation worldwide. So the message of hope here is that if you feel like you're comparing to others and you feel you are the one that is the sensitive flower, the one that everything just is so reactive, that is your methylation river. It is saying, I can't detox well. So when I have a patient saying, I just react to everything, and like anything that is even good, I just get really sick from it. It's the detox. It's that pathway that just isn't getting out of you easily.
Really?
Yeah,
that
really
is
cool.
The first time I've heard that. I mean, I've done a lot of podcasts about emotions and your health and, things like that, but no one's really said, because I know people like that are very sensitive and take everything to heart and explode at just the littlest of things. So you're saying that could be their methylation issue.
Yeah, just think of that. Like the nervous system, like serotonin, dopamine, acetylcholine, all of these neurotransmitters, they can only fire so quick as these genes allow. We have so many of that going through the MTHFR regulation pathway and comp gene. And so it, including with supplements though, say like I had a patient. So for example, I had a patient that was like, I love everything that she gives. And I tried the liver and it didn't go well. And then we died for, and there was methylation involvement. So when people are sensitive to even the supplement side, it's good product. Don't give up on the product. It's a sign and a red flag to you about your body that these were the genes I got from my parents. So don't like beat yourself up and make an emotional cascade of negative vibration. But this is good good information about myself, and to be curious, right? And to start looking deeper.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, and a little thing about supplements also. I try to tell people we make a variety of supplements to try to help a variety of people, but every single person's body is different and every body needs different supplements. So just because I make 10 supplements does not mean that you need 10 supplements. We've got to supplement for the body and what your body needs. And so
great plug. That's great.
Okay, well, that is so interesting about adrenals. So if people want to focus on helping their adrenals, we've talked about stress, so managing their stress better. We talked about diet, like the ups and downs of the blood glucose levels, keeping those more balanced, and getting more minerals in, and adaptogens. So are those like the main 4 things you would suggest, or what else do you help people with when they come to you?
I do mention this about adrenal. Adrenal, yes, to all of those things to support the adrenal space, right? And protein. I always, in my first visit, I get their protein dialed in, and I mention protein and bowel movement, and I'm hyper-focused about those 2 things, because the pooping allows me to understand how good is their lymphatic and their drainage system. If they are not 2 to 3 bowel movements a day, they have lymphatic involvement of blockage that is really going to go clear to the brain, right? Because every 12 hours, we need to be draining that, right? So if we aren't doing morning and night, we are not draining. And that's not good. That's a stress. It's another stress to the body. And then the adrenals go up. So that's sorry to drift a little bit. I'll come back. The tirzepatide and the semaglutides that everyone's injecting and having, I actually do support it with not everybody, but I do support it. It has a lot of good health benefits, but I've noticed that some people get anxiety. If they don't have good bowel regulation, they will get anxiety because serotonin is in the gut. And if that is not draining well, it will spike the anxiety with serotonin. Anyway, just want to make that little plug with that.
Did you bring in tirzepatide and semaglutide in those because people's bowel movements are slowed down on those? Yeah. And so they're not having 2 or 3 a day?
Yeah, so let me speak to that since we're going there. So mouth to anus, this river, right? If it is starting, the shoreline is getting so narrow that it plugs. Now you have endotoxin of flora that is building up behind that plug, that dam, if you will. And so that is now building up so severe that the receptors of serotonin interacting with the endotoxin will spike enough serotonin for anxiety. So if
Oh, interesting.
yeah, and then you think that you have the methylation cascade. So I don't mean to make it very complicated, but it is so important to test different rivers to make sure those pathways are flowing well. I think your question was with the adrenal and other means that, besides what we've mentioned, I was wanting to refer back to hormones with testosterone and progesterone. Testosterone, for me, how I describe it, is that it is yoked with cortisol. So if cortisol is the short distance sprinter of energy, right? And testosterone is our long distance sprinter or runner of energy. When I ask people, are you body tired or brain tired? If they're body tired, that's testosterone. If they're brain tired, it's more of adrenal, thyroid, and estradiol or estrogen.
Interesting.
So when we come back to that body tired, those two runners, say like you have, I'm just going to show my fist right here. So if you have the cortisol going down or going up and then going down, right? Then the testosterone will also break down as well. And usually it will kill the testosterone before the adrenal is finally dying, right? When it goes up, when the cortisol goes up, this testosterone is starting to die. And that's when you see low numbers of T. It's because that cortisol is really killing its brother or sister, right? And so what we have to do is kind of support the adrenal, say it's okay, and then start supporting through natural. I always go natural first to see if it will function with it and be enough of optimization on the testosterone side. But I have seen more time, like I can't even count how many times I've seen this, where you just focus on T and get it to a good place, that adrenal will start popping right back up to 12 to 14.
When you talk about testosterone, are you talking about giving women testosterone to get their adrenals back working as best as they can?
It's a great question that you have asked. I like to see if DHEA, I didn't go into that yet, but we could go now with it. DHEA, so luteinizing hormone from our brainstem will come to the adrenal space and say, hey, make this much progesterone and testosterone after going through a pregnenolone cascade. Sorry to give you that. I'm sure that went over some heads. But when it finally gets to progesterone, testosterone, it actually has a DHEA building block before it hits that. So DHEA it's just that hormone. It's a very beautiful anti-inflammatory hormone precursor to testosterone and cortisol. So I call it my adrenal hormone of support, because if your DHEA for females is not around 300 and for men close to 500 to 600, you've got a problem, because that is your feeding fuel of hormone building block that can't even support the adrenal space, right? So DHEA is our first go-to. And I was going to talk to you later about supplements, because I think you could just like you're so good at everything. So the cortisol side relies on that DHEA. So both cortisol and testosterone need that. How the adrenal actually decides which way it's going to go is it's the form of response, like the demand that our body is giving. So also, just a plug, ACTH is what makes cortisol signal to the adrenal. So you have an ACTH going to the adrenal to make cortisol, and you have an LH going to the adrenal to make testosterone. So of those two brainstem signals, whichever's louder is how the adrenal says, okay, you get more DHEA to make cortisol or to make testosterone. Did that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
okay.
That makes sense.
So
how do you get your DHEA measured? Is it a blood work?
Yeah, it's just a blood test. Yep. I have a full hormone blood test that I do, a panel. So.
And then if someone is low in that, what do you normally do?
DHEA. Yeah. You just give them DHEA.
So Gotcha.
Yeah. And then in addition, shilajit, which is an amazing humeric fulvic acid mineral from the Himalayas, that just recently, like last year and this year, was published of the ability to make free testosterone. It raises it by 200%. It's amazing mineral. So I usually will do DHEA and a shilajit. I know it's too legit to quit. And so I do those two things and coupled, and I usually get good outcome for the first follow-up. I usually can give that in my first lab follow-up, and then I'll give these things to see if we can heal naturally first. And then on the following follow-up, we start to get more aggressive because I don't want to leave the individual just sitting in low numbers. So at that point, I'll just be like, hey, your body's not really responding. How do you want to proceed? Do you want to keep seeing how this will ride out, or should we go a little more aggressive with just exogenous testosterone? Yeah, I really want to make this clear because if we don't do it right, it just leaves them in a vulnerable place of going high and low, which just allows more stress to the body. So troches, which are little pills that dissolve under the tongue, those only last like 6 hours. It's a very short half-life. I don't love a troche, but if that's all that they're willing to do, and it actually is a first pass to the liver, aka it hurts the liver. It shouldn't ever go to the liver. And so the troches actually do a second pass, not first pass, second pass to the liver. So I don't love that. And so I usually only recommend the cream and injectables and pellet for female and for men, to be honest. It's actually mutual at this point. Cream is kind of a risky business though, because for female, there's a four hour half-life of transferring to their children, to their spouse with intimacy. If they don't wash their hands, it will actually pass to their kids. Recently, like a month ago, there was actually in the news of a child that was rushed to the emergency room from androgen overload. They were getting so much testosterone and the baby was like growing hair everywhere. And it was,
oh, wow.
Yeah, the male actually was putting cream on and not washing. And that's very potent cream for a male. And so usually female, it's okay. But for male, it's like do not. You got to wash your hands. And it's a 12-hour half-life transference. So just be mindful and safe with what the hormones that you're using and putting on your body with. So, the injectables are easy with female. It can be a mess. I would say 80 to 90%. I usually don't give injectables for female because it's so small. They're like, did I inject anything? Because it's just hardly anything. And so then they have a risk of the spike, the troughs of a high and a low, very, very much so. And it stresses the body again, and they start to lose their hair. So pellets is a great option because hormone pellets that go under the skin act like the endocrine system of their reproductive glands. So with a pellet, you could do estradiol and testosterone every 4 months, and then you don't have to worry about these spikes and troughs or transference issues. So it's helpful. I'm willing, as I mentioned at the beginning, to be a resource and to go on the journey of what they feel comfortable with. So
yeah, I love that. Let's take a quick break to hear from our show sponsor. Staying hydrated and energized is a top priority, especially in these hot summer months. Hydration plays a role in so many body functions like supporting digestion and weight management, enhancing physical performance, boosting cognitive function, detoxing the body, and enhancing skin health. Getting enough electrolytes is essential for proper hydration. Just Ingredients electrolytes are formulated with a 3-to-1 potassium to sodium ratio. Sodium and potassium work together to move water in and out of the cells. The sodium and potassium also play an important role in nerve impulses and muscle contractions. Beyond the hydration benefits, Just Ingredients electrolytes are made without artificial dyes and no artificial and natural flavors. It's made from real fruit for fresh and delicious flavors. As a special offer for my podcast guests, I am offering 25% off all electrolyte flavors from now until August 16th with code JIPodcast. Visit justingredients.us to get your hands on some electrolytes. Some of my favorite flavors are guava mango, tropical paradise, and lemon lime. So take advantage and get a new flavor at justingredients.us with code JIPodcast. Now back to the show. Okay, so that's good to know about testosterone, the options of testosterone, and that testosterone can help the adrenal glands. That's how we all where we started with all this. But you were saying before this that if your body is tired from the stress, it's the low testosterone. If your brain is tired, it can be an estrogen problem. And so just this morning, I was walking with a friend and she was like, I am so mentally exhausted. Like, it is just, I'm having the hardest time because of how mentally exhausted I am. So I know there's other women that can relate to this for sure. I've at points been that way. And so what do you suggest when someone feels that way?
Yeah, and this is a controversial thing, right? Let's just start it out with that. So estrogen is very controversial. In the 95 study of the DHEA, right, with the women's study of Big Pharma, they were using an estrogen that was pharmaceutically made, so it was synthetic. It was not bioidentical. Let's make that very clear. It was not the beta-17 estradiol. That is the only estrogen we should be putting in us or on us. If it has any other estrogens, those are inflammatory and they will actually create inflammation to the breast and cause fibrocystic to your breast as well as the cancer, okay? But if we use only the beta-17 estradiol, we are in a much better safe avenue with estrogen. So yes, I do provide that estradiol to my patients. And I do not have cancer. I only see great results. I do occasionally see some form of lesions that are growing, but that was because it was so late in the game of when I showed up to help them that they were already inflamed and starting that process. Estradiol actually prevents cancer. It does not promote cancer if you go the right direction with it. And so that's why it's so important. Do not do the dual. There's Estra that people are using. Compounders. Biestra has inflammatory estrogen. You shouldn't be having an E3 or an E1, only the E2. That's the beta-17 estradiol. So estrogen for me, my two go-tos is not a cream. It's not a patch. It's only the pill and a pellet. And the reason being is that, so first pass to the liver is going into the gut and going through the mesenteric bloodstream to your liver. And that's our first appearance to the liver, if you will. Sorry for my fingers. They're like showing up weird. The second pass is actually more externally absorbed. So that's skin. That's the sub-Q under the tongue. Then that still will do a second cycle to the liver where it shows up. But you want both. So the ideal portion is to go into the fat cell, which is the pellet, or to the gut. So I'll do a pill or pellet. That will do the first pass to the liver. The pill has shown to be identically regulating hormone, like as if they were not through menopause. They look as if they are fertile, and which is amazing. And they're like 60 years old, so it's really cool.
Okay, so many American women are estrogen dominant. But yet then you hear about so many people that need estrogen. So how do you know which one, if you need estrogen or if you're estrogen dominant?
One of the things that you got to realize is that estrogen is being used and broken down in the liver. So estrogen dominance is actually, there's two parts to it. There are some that are very sensitive to estrogen, are very effective of keeping estrogen around. And so they don't need to go crazy. I actually just saw a patient yesterday with this. And I pellet her. And she was able to go to high levels of estrogen with just the smallest milligram of estrogen. And that just means her body's very effective of utilizing estrogen and keeping it around. Lab tests will show estrogen dominance first try. It will just show that they are in the toilet across the board and their estrogen is just through the roof high. I don't like to see an estrogen more than like 130, maybe 140. And so if they're going way high, like 175 or above, that's a good sign. Even before starting hormone therapy, we've got to watch them closely, that we're not going to keep shooting them high, right? And the way you can do this is through helping the liver bind and throw the estrogen metabolites through the liver and the gut. So I don't know if many know this, but estradiol metabolites, or estriol, do we actually know? So I'll just put this out there. E1 is estrone, and then E2 is estradiol, and E3 is estriol. The only time you need E3 is if you're pregnant. It's for lactation purposes, okay? So the other two is estrone is E3. That is the side effects, the bad side effects of estrogen. So E1 is most dominant in the liver on phase 2. You'll go estrogen dominant if the liver is sick and not throwing it through those compartments. So you go phase 1, phase 2, and then phase 3 of gallbladder, gut, right? And then the toilet. We have to make sure each part is binding appropriately so that it goes to the toilet and not back in the system. How the biggest sign of estrogen dominance occurs is that things are recycling back to the liver. And so where it hits the gut, it will have leaky gut syndrome. Those gap junctions are open enough that estrogen metabolite is doing a second ride through. And so then the liver's like, oh, it's back again. So then it will throw it to the skin. It will throw it to our adipose tissue. And so for females, when they know that they're estrogen dominant, they will have usually thickened thighs. But number one, that even makes sense, is the abdominal area. The abdominal fat region is a sign that you have estrogen dominance sitting in. So how I help it the most is DIM, cruciferous vegetable extracts from broccoli and cauliflower, right? That makes a lot of DIM compound structure. And that is a good way of hitting phase 1. How I describe phase 1 in the liver is that it is a macro size level that's going through the grind mill, right? It's trying to break down stuff that are quite large. And then phase 2 is the micro side. There, it's more powder, right? It's already really broken down so that it can go to the gut. Phase 2 is the crucial one. That's where you can get inflammatory breast disease going into fibroids, as well as the cancer. So we have to make sure we protect phase 2, and that's the sulfurate or sulfonate. I always mix that word up. And that is crucial. It's probably the best one found in the studies besides decalcium glucarate. But just recently this year, the study actually showed 10 to 20% more effective with the sulfonate metabolite binding. So once it gets to the gut, I like to use what's called from Silver Fern Cleanse, but I believe there's others as well. Sun fiber is an excellent choice. In the 1970s, when Miralax became a thing, FDA kind of shut down the immense amount of fiber that was in our diet. So they removed the fiber so that we would have Miralax come in the scene to save the day and make money, right? And so what we have to focus on is that female. I used as a nurse before I became DMP. I was in the endoscopy department of the hospital, and 9 out of 10, it's always IBS or we don't know what's going on, right, in your gut. And there's no fiber. Like I would have to educate the patient, if you have diverticuli, you need more fiber. You need that muscle to be squeezing on something, right? You're getting all these hernias in your gut. So really just allowing more fiber to naturally bind. You look at the 1950s, people look great for the most part. Like they were binding naturally. They could smoke, drink, and do whatever. And that's just because their fiber was so high in content, it was doing the job and they had no idea. They were innocent in the understanding of what the body was doing to protect them. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. If you wanted to make an interjection.
No, that's great. No, I was just going to consolidate for everybody because we started with estrogen dominance. So you basically are saying that if you have that stubborn stomach fat as a woman that just is growing, that can be estrogen dominance. And so I love that you say we've got to poop this estrogen out rather than it be recirculated into the body. So we need to work on the gut and the liver to help this out, which so many people don't know that you need to support the liver and the gut for hormones, but that a really easy way to do this is to get more fiber. because that's going to help the gut and help move that estrogen through. So
You betcha.
was that a good synopsis of what
Yes,
you just said?
That was absolutely good. And I'm sorry. I'm so passionate. I have to put timers in my console because I'll just keep talking because I love what we do. It's so
Well, I love
beautiful.
that.
One last thing to it. If estrogen is not bound appropriately, say people are in a fiber content of only 10 to 15 grams of fiber a day and not to the 20 to 25 or above, if you're low in fiber, 10 out of 10, you will be having estrogen of the estrone, E1, going into the gut, and that will actually, it becomes an endotoxin. It feeds the wrong flora in our gut, and it will allow what's called lipopolysaccharides, which are an LPS molecule that will actually create foggy brain, leaky brain. It actually makes holes in our blood-brain barrier with the astrocytes. And so if we don't take care of this issue, it will make holes in our gut. Our brain will get very foggy and brain fatigued. Anyway.
That's interesting, though, because so many people who are estrogen dominant complain that their brain fog is out of control. And so that makes sense as to why. When you give a woman estrogen, do you also need to give them progesterone also, or no?
Oh, thank you. Yes, absolutely. Yes. The sisters, right? Progesterone is the ice and estrogen's the heat, the fire. So if progesterone won't balance with estra, you have to watch them so closely. More binding on estra down if progesterone's not going well. Like all the stress response, right? Where it's going down to 0, right? So you have to really watch that.
So you never give one without the other.
Correct. Or as long as I'm trying to I'm trying to make sure, because say they're super young and they're the teenager, right? No progesterone. You wouldn't start medicating with progesterone, right? Maybe some natural wild yam or something, but really you're focusing on that neuro and stress level, because then progesterone can breathe. Or a thyroid. Thyroid will speak to progesterone really well. So I'll do that route and then just see where we're at. But yeah, you got to really balance it for sure. That's when the females are like,
Glad I asked that.
Crazy. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You talked about the more fiber for the gut, which should be easy for people to do. I mean, I say that, but it means getting more fruits, veggies, beans, lentils, all that good stuff into their diet. But the liver plays a huge role. And so what do you suggest for people to support their liver?
Yeah, absolutely. So beautiful. The liver is 25 plus manager for our body, right? It's our biggest project manager. And so the liver for hormone is just that. It's DIM and sulforaphane. I get this word,
or
I'll be amazed.
sulforaphane, and yeah.
In addition to, if I find that they have fatty liver and elevated enzyme, I always point to your product, Liver Complex. It literally has all the things I've studied. And so I actually love how beautifully put that supplement is. So,
well, because back to the MTHFR gene, if you have that can be hard on your liver to really do the best job possible that it can do with detoxing. And so that's been my issue. So I did make that for myself so that I could support my liver and have those methylated B vitamins and things like that.
It's beautiful. Yep. Beautiful, beautiful.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the adrenal glands and the sex hormones, but we haven't touched upon the thyroid, and that was the third leg that you said a lot of women deal with. And I think those that know they have thyroid issues do pretty well with it, but then I think there's a lot of people that have thyroid issues that don't even know they have thyroid issues. So,
totally.
So maybe we should just start at the beginning as to what is the thyroid and what's its function in women's health.
Yeah, so the thyroid is just this little soft gland right here in the neck region, right in your throat, right in front of the throat. You can actually even feel it if you swallow. You'll feel the rubbing on your fingers when you swallow. It'll go up and down with it. How I label the thyroid, I say that your liver is your project manager, making sure things are working right, the flow is good in the body, and that we're getting rid of things that the body doesn't want, sending it to the skin and so forth, and the kidneys and the gut. But the thyroid is our main contractor. It is focused on safety for our body inside the body. Our brain and eyes are trying to protect outside the body. making sure that the body is safe. But inwardly, the thyroid is trying to really regulate and keep up with keeping the body safe. And so if we have infertility, if we have PCOS, we have a uterus that is not functioning. And so that is a thyroid dilemma of dysfunction plus progesterone through cortisol even, right? So there's, as we've already pointed out, there's more than one way. So how I describe it further. So say you have we're building a house, right? And the lumber is protein, and the grunt workers around, those are because we're building muscle right now. And the little grunt runners around the house are building the house. That's testosterone. Okay, so the lumber is protein, but the contractor showing up to the scene, that is thyroid. It's saying where to put everything, making sure we are building a house right now and not a shack, and making sure it's done right, right? And so when we have a thyroid that is like a free T3 of only like 2 or 1 or even 3.5, it is a contractor really not showing up to the scene. I like a good optimized T3. I really do. I like a free T3 to be around 5 to 7. That's just me. And that's the beauty of practice, right? Everyone practices differently, and I respect that. I really do. But for me, what I've seen best with my patients, it's not the cure-all, but if we don't have a contractor showing up well enough to each organ system, we will have struggles. That's like saying basically, because like say our whole body is a building, another analogy, and basically the messenger runner that has to message why free T3 is so important. It communicates to our mitochondria. This is what you're doing today. This is how strong you're going to be working today, right? And so when we have a messenger going through that whole big building, which is our body, and it's only knocking one of every 6 doors in the, adrenal gland or the uterus, it's now dysregulating because those other 4 doors that it's missing between the 1 and 6, or whatever, 1 and 5, it's just not allowing a good turf of the endometrium to show up, right? And so because of that, it's now not going to hold an egg appropriately. It's not going to allow a good circadian rhythm of a period, or the periods are really painful. And migraine periods even. I've seen so many migraine periods go away with optimized thyroid. And it's really just because it's really showing up to get these systems running appropriately, if that's making any sense.
Yeah, that does. That was a good analogy. And that's really interesting about the cycles being off, or the migraines during the cycles, things like that. And so besides those, are there other common symptoms that would say to a woman, oh, you've got thyroid issues? Because I do hear about the thinning of hair one all the time. You know, people will say, my hair's thinning, and people always say, have you checked your thyroid? So is that one plus some other ones?
Wow, that's a great question as well. So the thyroid shows up, just like I was saying, a contractor to everything, follicle hair, root hairs. It shows how much production you should be doing per day. Unfortunately, when we even get hormones optimized, I want people to understand hormones are just that. They are DNA related of regulating the cell because they go clear to the nucleus. That's what a hormone can do. Not every regulating thing on a cell does that, but like nutrients and minerals, like B vitamins, they don't go clear to the nucleus, but hormones do. And so that's because I bring that up only because cell turnover is between 2 to 3 months for good changes to occur. So people are like, I'm still not growing my hair. It takes a while. And I use peptides. I know that's a buzzword. I could speak to a whole podcast about that. But peptides are really just amino acids, proteins of 4 to 6 different proteins to make a message that goes straight to the cell membrane. So it doesn't need to go to the liver. It doesn't need to be screened because we've made those peptides. So it's very identified in our body. And those actually go away around age 25 to 30, by the way. And that's why we feel the aging process increase, because it makes us young. But the hormones take usually a year to really grow and get good outcome of what we're wanting. So you kind of just have to saturate the body in good optimization that long. if people are like, I need help and I want it to improve yesterday, I use hormones once they are good on the table where I want them. I'll just leave those there and continue at that dosage of everything. And that's usually, between 3 or 4 months that we can get people there. But then in regards to the peptides, that's when I'll bring those in, because that actually shortens it down to like 6 months, even, or shorter. It will grow hair, it will do all that. So that's one symptom of thyroid that we mentioned. But then also cold hands, feet, notorious for being a thyroid problem. If they always are just saying, I'm ice cold, it right in the sunlight, and it will not warm up, that is thyroid. It is in charge of our lymphatic circulation, how well things are dilating. Because again, it's the contractor showing up at the scene saying, this is how much you should constrict or dilate. So it's a form of dysregulation on a blood vessel level. So there's that piece. I would almost say Raynaud's syndrome can be another issue that can be fixed through thyroid. A lot of autoimmunity is a lack of cell communication of the free T3. And so when we get that good signaling to all the cells, they're no longer floating islands of inflammation. They'll actually come back and work as a team again, because the body wants to be a team. But if there's no communication, it just starts to drift into inflammation and can't, if it stays there long enough. So that piece, there's even numbness and tingling, hands and feet. There's the carpal tunnel syndrome that's fixed through thyroid. Let's see. I mean, honestly, Carlin,
it's a lot,
right? Like that. If you think you have a disorder, it's probably thyroid related. There was just a study saying, in the PubMed study, just last year, I saved it. It's like 85 to 90% people are not identified and are in a disorder of thyroid. They just don't even know.
Wow.
They think they're aging, right? So anyway, big deal.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so you touched upon this just really quick, so I want to ask you about this. You said that PCOS can be a thyroid issue, and most times you hear about PCOS being an insulin issue or, with inflammation, things like that. And so why is it a thyroid issue as well?
Yeah, great question. And I will say it's not a cure-all, like anything. There could be neurologic stress, right? Making cortisol revving. If people have POTS or PANDAS, which we also help, that those are different neurologic symptoms that will affect into PCOS. And it's genetic. So let's start off by saying message of hope. I've had so many people cry in my office that they are spent and out of steam, like to be able to go forward. And that they just feel I'm about to give them the same thing and that they're normal and that they don't have a problem. But it's really cool to watch the shift of the individual and to feel the trust resolve through that as we keep working together. So I just want to say a message of hope. PCOS is optional. We can get you regulated. And the reason being is PCOS is on an LH-FSH. That's one of the main diagnoses. LH will be 3 units higher from an FSH. So say a FSH is 3, LH will be around like 6 or higher. And so then it's just pushing down the FSH so that there's dysregulation of the ovulation cycle. So that's part of the whole cystic ovarian problem that's going on there. Glucose, how that gets involved is that you have a metabolic disorder happening in the liver related with an adrenal stress response that has to be regulated because the body is feeling this whole rev of I'm not okay. And you just see a revving natural baseline of higher glucose level. And so as we fix adrenal, we fix glucose, which, by the way, the thyroid communicates to the whole project manager, which is the liver, by getting glucose under control. Because as we all know, glucose and cholesterol is how the liver wants to play the game. And it's based on stress levels. The liver will pick up catecholamines, interleukins, and identify how stressed is the body that I need to promote all my cholesterol and glucose for the adrenals to win this race. So it's amazing how I just love the liver. You could talk a whole hour about it. It's such a beautiful organ. But anyway, the thyroid naturally will get you in a good spot on glucose, on LH-FSH signaling, which, by the way, for PCOS, I just need them to be yoked. I need them to be sisters again. Right now they're fighting and they got to come together. As long as they are like one-to-one on with one another, they regulate really nicely. They really do. And so, but we can't just say, oh, it's your thyroid, because it's a stress response too. Like I just had a patient yesterday or the day before just be like, what's going on? Our thyroid's good. I'm dysregulating again. And it's because they had a stressful event come up. And yes, that will happen if we don't regulate other things as well. So.
No, that's really interesting because I think a lot of people don't necessarily put the thyroid with PCOS. So that's actually really good. And so what, though, do you say to the women, though, that go get their blood work done and their general practitioner just says, oh, your thyroid's great, it's fine, or it's in normal range, and they still have these symptoms of just not feeling great because it happens quite often?
I know, isn't it? It's so sad. It's very much. TSH, I will say, if they say they are fine, just a message of hope. I need TSH to be 1 or less. I could speak to the whole desiccated question conundrum, but people are always like, my TSH is really low. Isn't that concerning? I'm like, no, because the brainstem failed you, right? The brainstem is not carrying that well. So it's all that it is a, right? So I really don't care about a TSH. Doesn't speak anything to me about how well your thyroid is operating. It's just our brainstem's like, I think we're good. And that's about it. So I'm just going to really drop low the TSH because I think we're fine. But this is the conundrum of the brainstem going to the thyroid. It only measures the T4 and a total T3. It does not look at the free T3. It does not see how well the messenger is actually going to all the cells. If it actually measured a good free T3, and may I put this plug in, 5 to 7 is actually noted in a teenager that is like a sports athlete. So usually our thyroids were at our prime when we were 5 to 7 of a free T3. So what CDC has done is taken a geriatric of an 80-year-old and put that lab range in, said, you look good. So I never look at lab ranges, right? I know. So I never look at lab ranges for that very reason. It just is not a good way to go. So I would say, to answer your question, where you said I need where they say that everything is normal, I would just say that is only because they did not test the right labs. You don't want just a TSH. You don't even just want a free T4 or a total T4. You need to have a reverse T3 to see how stressed the body is. I could speak to that. And then also a free T3. Total T3 is great, but just so to explain all these, it's really rough, like goes over many heads. So the total T4 is a reservoir. It is meant to break into a free T4. So that is our first cascade in the thyroid from a TSH coming to it, the signal. So after it goes free T4, then it starts to fill up into a total T3, and then making into a reverse T3 and a free T3, depending on our stress response in our body. If we are stressed really hard in our body with high cortisol, reverse T3 is going to be made because it's wanting to make sure we're okay, and it puts it into storage. So we don't even use that, and so it's rough.
Well, it seems like the whole takeaway from the whole show could be manage your stress, because the stress is affecting the hormones, the sex hormones, it's affecting the adrenals, it's affecting the thyroids. And so if those are the 3 things that you're seeing the most with women in your practice, we have somehow got to manage our stress.
Yeah.
And that Absolutely. Is our lifestyle factors and our diet.
Absolutely. And if it comes to it, really working on that vagus nerve, the vagal nerve dysfunction, vagal nerve coming from our gut, it only is a high response of fight or flight when the brain is interpreting as such, right? So if the brain's like, oh my heck, I'm not okay, right? Running from a bear, then the vagus nerve increases. So if I'm noticing, regardless of good hormone management of 80%, I should say this too, hormones will manage 80% of your issue. If you're still not feeling well, there is still a 20% of pathogen, vagal neuro dysfunction that needs to be looked at, and gut health I put with the hormone side because it's my first thing I address. But then if there is more, it's like co-infection, opportunistic infection, Lyme, heavy metal, mold, those things. Autoimmune is actually doing really well from the first area. It will cool right down if you address it appropriately. But yeah, stress is always a trigger, as you're saying, for sure.
Okay, so really quick, because we're getting close on time here, but I know people are going to say like, well, how then do I help my vagus nerve? Like, what do you have little tips that they can do at home?
Yeah, deep breathing through your nose, and then out through your mouth. If you just do like kind of the labor breathing that they kind of prep you for, the midwife preps you for the baby, like that actually will calm you within like 2 minutes into a different shift of energy, including the vagal nerve. I do love, it's a device that is locally, Dr. Harrison in South Jordan. I love to send people over there because he actually has a device that you just put on your neck to cool down the vagal nerve response. And it actually works really great. You can calm it down in 30 seconds. But yeah, breathing is huge. Breathing is huge. Ice baths or cold showers, just helping the immune system regulate better, helps with the stress level. Exercise is probably the only added stress that helps to cool down the stress in our body. Everything else, it's just kind of doing the calm self-care, walking away every day where you meditate, ponder, like you got to just calm things down, really.
Yeah, it's amazing how much stress plays a role in everything. And I love cryotherapy. I hope that is compared to cold plunges for the vagal nerve.
Yep.
Okay.
Very good.
Well, we have so much more that we can talk about. Women are just complex with, all these hormones and things, and so many women out there trying to feel better. They just don't feel as great as they, one time did. And so you are still taking patients, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You bet.
And so where can people find you and learn more from you?
Yeah. So my clinic, I actually opened that up just because of so many patients requesting it. So that is in Lehi, Utah. It's called Ultimate Health and Wellness. I'm currently working to get the website going so that we can just have people schedule online. Right now, if they search, it will just say it's under construction, but I'll probably on Instagram announce that. But yeah, if you just Google Ultimate Health and Wellness, Lehi, Utah, you can, make an appointment. The phone number is 801, what is it? 801-477-0068.
Perfect.
So, anyway.
Do you do telehealth or only in person?
I do telehealth as well. I'm wanting, the goal long term is to be having licensure in all 50 states. Currently, I'm in California, Idaho, and Utah. Texas is pending, and I'm trying to just, based on requests, if patients want to call in, I could just get that one as a high priority of getting licensure for. It doesn't take very long. I have a staff member that's working on that. So
okay, good to know. Well, thank you so much for educating the women today. I know, like I said, they're going to have more questions, so I'm going to tell them to reach out to you for all the questions, because we just barely touched the surface of, so many things that we could talk about. But thank you for being here. And I always end my podcast with asking my guests what they have found to be the best ingredient in life. What would you say it is?
Is one of my favorite that I was thinking through was magnesium. When we travel, in your mag complex, wow, slam dunk. You did such a good job. And that's my magnesium I love, just so you know. I'm shifting gear to that one. But magnesium is so easily taken up and absorbed because our brain, our spleen, liver, heart, and muscles, we use it, and gut, we use it so much more when we're stressed. And when people are traveling, that's why you plug up. It's because of stress of an environment, radiation if you're flying, which is like 40 x-rays when we fly. And so we have to be mindful that our bodies need more support when we are increase of stress. I call it the MAG challenge, where you have to do morning and night capsules of taking, and you just keep increasing to the point of loose stool diarrhea. That's the easy way of knowing that your MAG level is at a good place. Once you're at loose stool diarrhea, you go to the previous dose, and you found it. So, and that will change depending on the stress. So.
Oh, interesting. Well, and as we've talked about in the show, so many people are stressed. And like you said, you burn through that magnesium when you're stressed. And so someone told me the other day, if you have a pulse, you need to be taking magnesium. So I was like, okay, that is good.
Yes.
Well, I love all the advice that you've given. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.
Thank you so much for listening. Remember to subscribe to the Just Ingredients podcast to learn more about your health and good ingredients to life. Plus, get daily tips at just.ingredients on Instagram.